Hey there, I'm Blarchar, and over the past few days I beat Pokemon Infinite Fusion using a team of only Ghost-type Pokemon. I'm just gonna jump straight into the video. If you're confused or need more information, check out the description below or one of my previous videos about Infinite Fusion. Let's get started. This time I'm going with another normal name, but with a funny extra letter thrown in there. I've randomized all the wild Pokemon and the starters and gift Pokemon, so I have to choose between Execute, Abra, and Psyduck. For some reason I go for Psyduck. Not like I'm going to use them anyway. Gary throws his Abcute at me and I actually lose this fight for once. I grab Oak's parcel and get my Pokeballs, and the first Pokemon I run into is a Litwick, which is one of my favorite ghost types available in this game. The mailman on the Pokemart gives me a Croconaw, and I fuse the two together to make a crazy looking Litnaw. I fight Gary over on Route 22, and Litnaw is able to take down both of his Pokemon with Fire Spins. Not too bad. I'm not able to find any other ghost types on the way over to Pewter City, but I have faith in Litnaw, so I send him in alone against Brock's two rock types. Even though it's not very effective, I'm able to take down both of his Pokemon with a combination of Fire Spin, Chip Damage, and Confusion Self-Damage, and some Bites. It probably helps that Litnaw has a bit of a stat boost thanks to being already evolved. I'm skipping through Mount Moon since I've already covered it a few times. Near Cerulean City, I find myself a Ghastly and catch that happily. I fuse it with the Togepi I found, and it makes an oddly cute Togetly. I head back to the same patch of grass at night and find another ghost, a Yamask fused with a Happiny. It's cute, but I'm unfusing this happy couple so I can fuse the Yamask with a Clink, making Yaink. Yank? Yank? Yank. With a few more members in my team, I head to Nugget Bridge to fight Gary. For some reason, his Nidoto's whirlwind happy this fight, but I whittle it down. He's got his usual Mantata and his Abtor, unfortunately doesn't have a custom sprite. Yet. Be patient. I take out the rest of his team with a little effort, and the Togepi half of Togetly evolves into Togetic, and this sprite looks a bit nicer. I'm then able to move on and grab my SSN ticket from Bill. As I moved on to Misty, I realized I could use my recording program to easily fill out the borders on the side, so you'll be seeing my current team on the left as I progress through the game. Misty's not too difficult, and I try using Metronome on Togetly whenever I can because it's fun. She calls on Revelation Dance, Oricorio's signature move, making it a fairy-type attack, finishing off Audio. Afterward, I move south to Route 5 and find a Shedinja fused with a Shinx. I catch it, unfuse it, and fuse the Shedinja with the Charmander instead. The resulting Charinja has a really cool fiery halo. Shortly after, Charinja evolves, and the whole run it reminded me of this icon I often see, but can never remember what it's actually for or where I see it. Later on, while on the SSN, my Togetly evolves into a Togeter, and this dude just looks goofy by this point. It helps when taking out the rival battle on the ship, which is pretty uneventful at this point. I head into Lieutenant Surge's gym, and this one actually gave me a bit of trouble. I take out Voltbee with a combination of Will-O-Wisp and Hex. Piccolet is easily taken out by Litnaw's Water Pulse. Rybuzz, however, is the source of quite a few losses, because it just knocks out all my Pokemon in 1 or 2 hits, so I have to resort to some revive strategies. But I eventually get its health down, and I can take it out with some Draining Kisses. I move on to Rock Tunnel, and I find the area where you normally get a Honedge in a secret area, but the old man gives me a Shuppet, a different ghost type, which I enthusiastically accept to add to my team. Before I make it to Lavender Town, Litnaw's Croconaw half evolves into Feraligatr, and this is honestly one of my favorite fusion sprites I've seen so far. It looks so amazing. Once I make it to Lavender Town, I check for fusions with the Shuppet I received, and I'm able to fuse it with the Doduo, which I've never used before. The Shupduo that comes of it is alright. I'll see how it turns out in the future when it evolves. I teleport back to Pewter City to revive the 2 fossils I have at the museum. The first one I get just gives me a Teddiursa, but the second gives me a Drifloon, another Pokemon I've never used before. I decide to fuse it with a Beldum to make a strange-looking Driftdum. I run into Gary again in the Pokemon Tower, and his Kadabra Executor still doesn't have a custom sprite, so there's nothing really to see at this point, except for the fact that he now has 2 Kadabra fusions, which is interesting at least. On the way to Celadon, my Driftdum evolves into Drifttang, and it's looking even stranger than previously. Not sure I'm feeling this fusion. I make it to Celadon and go on a romantic date with Erika in the sewers. Some dude named Giovanni barges in and tries to steal my girl, but I start a fight with him to assert my dominance. His Honkon gave me a lot of trouble over the course of a few battles, since it was one-shotting all of my Pokemon with Shadow Balls, but eventually I'm able to whittle it down with Togeter and run him off. Erika agrees on a second date in a little bit, and I head on out. Heading back to Lavender, my Ink evolves into Kofa Ink, and I like the stone block theme. While climbing the Pokemon Tower, my Drifting also evolves, and it doesn't have a custom sprite, which is relieving, since I wasn't getting much use out of it. I unfused it, but can't find anything at the moment to fuse it with, so I go out to find something to fuse it with, and find a Mawile, fusing them to Driftwile, and I like that it's blowing a bubble with some gum. It's a creative sprite. Later, my Shuppduo evolves into a Shuppdrio, and it's just an extra head. Hopefully the next evolution is better. Since I already have a Fairy fusion in my Togetic Hunter, I unfuse the Drifblim in Mawile to fuse Drifblim with my new Snorlax, and I adore the new Driftlax that comes of it. Since I'm in Fuchsia City now, I head to the Safari Zone. All the Pokemon in the grass are randomized, but the new Desert Temple has Golett walking around, which I head in and grab one of to add to the team. I fuse it with my leftover Metang, and it's a really cool robot/mecha fusion. I'm sure most Golett fusions are as good looking as this one is. Now that I have more than 6 ghost types, I now have a separate box section on the screen to the right, just so you know what else I have while I'm playing. Also, you might notice I haven't updated the Drifblim sprite, since I don't always remember to update the screen while I'm playing. I do change it eventually. Anyway, while searching for more ghost types, I evolve my Chirinja, and it gains a new tail and wings, and I'm really liking it. Togetur evolves into Togegar, and this dude is just happy to be here. Look at her, just waving and smiling. Litligator also evolves soon after, and unfortunately, Lampent doesn't have a custom sprite with Feraligatr, which is really disappointing because I was having a lot of fun using it. I can't get any Dusk Stones yet to see if it has a fusion with Chandelure, so I have to unfuse it for now. On the way back to the Pokemon Center, Shuppdrio evolves into Bandrio, and I really like that the sprite used Mega Bennett's pink features to flesh out this fusion. Back at the PC, I fuse the Lampent with my Teleport HM friend Jinx to make a Lampynx. Wow, that's hard to say. Anyway, I've never used a Jinx before, so this is a nice looking new fusion that kinda makes up for losing the Feraligatr fusion. I eventually make it back to Celadon City to head to Erika's place for our second date. My new Lampynx is able to destroy her with Inferno and Hex, so I'm glad this fusion came to be. I think that's a successful second date, yeah? Girls like it when you set fire to all their pets, right? Since I've already been to Fuchsia City, I teleport straight over to take on Koga. Bandrio is able to get off a sword stance and take out Venomer, then Lampynx comes out to take out 2 more, and Togegar finishes off Beether. Then Chinook comes out. This thing took me 7 whole minutes on a sped up game to take out. It's got amazing defenses, leftovers, evasion raising double team, and defense boosting acid armor. If I can't hit it for a couple turns, it heals off all the damage I did for the 1 hit I landed. It doesn't even have any good attacking moves, so its strategy is to simply PP stall me. I understand the hate for stall teams in competitive Pokemon now. Thankfully, I have elixirs to restore my PP, and I can use Water Pulse with Togegar to confuse Chinook and get lucky with it hurting itself over and over. I basically had to wait it out until it ran out of PP so that it would struggle and knock itself out. Now I know in the future to bring moves that can't miss like Swift or Aerial Ace, or even moves like Haze or Clear Smog which reset stat stages on Pokemon, or moves like Trick or Switcheroo to remove the leftovers entirely. One-hit KO moves like Guillotine or Destiny Gone too. Lots of options to make hard fights like this easier that I just wasn't thinking of at the time. After I'm through with that headache, I move on to Silphco and Saffron City. Inside, my Metlet evolves into Metlurk. I find Gary on the top floor, and there's nothing really to say. It's the same team from the last few rounds of the game, and our double battle against Giovanni isn't any different. Let me know if in the future you even want to see these fights where the teams don't really change. Like I said at the end of my previous video, if the developers are able to fix the game crashing with randomized trainers, then I'd keep that on all the time, but for now it just seems redundant. In any case, my Metlurk evolves again, this time into Metalurk, and it's awesome. Reminds me a bit of the Iron Giant. I grab my randomized Pokemon reward from the Silphco president, and it turns out to be a Honedge, which is amazing luck that so many of my gift Pokemon were ghost types I haven't received yet. Now that I can travel to Goldenrod City, I can buy a Shiny Stone to evolve my Togegar, who looks a little less awkward now, and a Dusk Stone to evolve my Lampynx into Shandenx, whose name is thankfully much easier to pronounce now. I take on the Fighting Gym in Saffron to grab a new gift Pokemon, and the Hitmontop turns out to be a Golem. Not a ghost type, but something that might be fun to fuse with in the future. I move on to Sabrina right after, and it turns out to be a relatively clean sweep. Her team falls almost entirely to Driftlax's Shadow Ball, with Togagar bringing up the rear. I try to finish it off with Metronome, but get some useless moves like Power Swap and Coil, so I just have to go with Shadow Ball to be safe. I decide to fuse my Hone Edge with Golem, and it makes a really creative pickaxe holding it rock. A lot of the Hone Edge line fusions have really creative sprites like this. I surf over to Cinnabar Island, and Team Rocket steals the Sea Gallop ferry from the docks to sail to Mount Ember where Moltres is. I follow them, and on my way into the mountain, my Go Edge evolves, and unfortunately it doesn't have a custom sprite. So I head out of there and try another Dust Stone to see if Aegislash has a custom sprite with Golem, and it doesn't either. I have to unfuse them, and I try Aegislash out with Feraligatr, and although it looks like a greatsword you'd find in a Monster Hunter game, I don't like it as much, so I fuse it with Dragonair, which looks great. But I look it up to see if Dragonite and Aegislash has a Ghost-type fusion, and they don't, so I wind up fusing Aegislash with Absol to make an Abslash. At least it's useful for resisting Ghost and Dark-type moves, which are the bane of this team. Heading further into Mount Ember, Kofa Ink evolves into Kofang. I really like how they're building on this Egyptian wall theme. I make it down to the bottom and fight ZapMolCuno. Metalurk's Meteor Mash takes out Articuno with no problem. However, the rest of the fight is not so easy. Both Zapdos and Moltres have Roost. You can't just whittle them down over time as they'll just heal up. It doesn't help that for each time I get one move off, they get two moves, which usually takes out any Pokemon I have out there. Driftlax is the one who can take the most hits, and it has a pretty decent attack stat, and its ability is Thick Fat so it can resist Moltres' fire attacks, so it's my main hero for most of the battle. Eventually Moltres runs out of PP for Flamethrower, and Zapdos runs out of Thunderbolt PP, so I'm able to take out each one slowly, using Elixir partway through in order to get back Hammer Arm and Meteor Mash, and I eventually take it down. Afterwards I head back to Cinnabar and take on Blaine. Driftlax takes out Gludash, Togagar takes out 9-9, Bandrio KOs Pterodactyl, and I revive Togagar in order to two-shot Magdon with Water Pulse. On to Giovanni and Viridian. Togagar trades a few blows with Electatrio, but takes it down eventually. Bandrio gets off a Sword Stance and can KO Glissatar. I full restore Bandrio to take out Rhyperass and Gochamp with Jump Kicks, and Rylak goes down to a Jump Kick and Drill Peck. Definitely helps to have a flying type to be immune to the ground type moves in this gym. Moving on to Gary over by the Pokemon League, he's got his usual Nidogeot, Electados, Maghorn, and TaoQ. At least his Starter Fusion finally evolved fully, and the Alator sprite here looks pretty cool. It made me realize he has 2 Executor fusions and 2 Alakazam fusions. Kinda funny how that turned out. In Victory Road, my Kofang evolves into Kofaklang, and I like how the ancient hieroglyphs turn out to actually be unknown, which is super creative. I want to commend the artist of this sprite line. I catch Entei again before moving on to the Elite Four, but I'm not in Modern mode this time, so I won't have to bring in any legendary fusions to counter their stronger teams in Modern mode. Now at the Pokemon League, I head in with a team of a Flying-type Bandrio, a Normal-type Driftlax, Psychic-type Shandunks, Sealed-type Metalurk, Dark-type Aegislash, and Fairy-type Togagar. I think I have a better spread of types for resistances than I had in any previous run, so I'm hoping for a good one. Also, I forget to change the border graphics. I switched in Metalurk for Kofaklang. Oops. Versus Lorelei, I lead Metalurk against her Magong. Unfortunately, I go down to 1 Flamethrower and send in Togagar to try out a Metronome, but I get a Stockpile. Could be worse. I get a Supersonic, which confuses Magong, so that's helpful, and Metronome pulls Baton Pass so I can pass on the defensive bus from Stockpile to Bandrio. Ridiculously, Jump Kick misses and I take a bunch of recoil damage and am taken out without dealing any damage at all. Driftlax comes out and I use Phantom Force to finally take out Magong. Lorelei sends out Weerass, and I try to Belly Drum, but it knocks me below half HP, so it fails and I get knocked out on the next turn. I send in Shandunks, and Inferno takes Weerass to half HP and burns it, but I still faint to Night Slash. Abslash comes in to take advantage of the burn, whittling down Weerass while setting up the Sword Stance. Unfortunately, it can only take care of Weerass before Chingrowth comes out and KOs Abslash. All I have left at this point is a half HP Togagar, so I have to start using revives again. After healing up Metalurk, I'm able to knock out Chingrowth with some Sludge Bombs. Lorelei sends in Tentaster, who knocks out Metalurk, and I send in Bandrio again, who knocks it out with a Jump Kick. Mambro is her last Pokemon, but I'm not taking any chances. I revive Driftlax, who's able to get a free rest off with a Chesto Berry. A few Phantom Forces later, and Lorelei is defeated. I feel like I should have brought more revives, but too late now. I move on to Bruno, who leads with Navire versus my Metalurk. Stomping Tantrum KOs it in 2, and then he sends out Steechamp, who gets switched out after 1 turn into Sicross, who also falls in 2 Hammer Arms. Steechamp comes back in, who also gets KO'd in 2 Hammer Arms. Metalurk's reign ends when Marochan comes in and knocks out with a Bone Meringue. I send in Togegar, who 2-shots with Draining Kiss. Magnemix is last out, and I try out Metronome since I'm in a safe spot. I get Water Pledge, which deals a good amount of damage, and then Hyper Voice, which is just awful. Then Screech, which is useless with specially attacking Togegar. Super Fang is next, which at least deals set damage. Then Mega Horn almost knocks it out. I decide to go for Shadow Ball to safely finish it off, but I get paralyzed, so I'm outsped and knocked out by Iron Tail. Bandrio comes in to quickly finish it off. Moving on to Agatha, who's usually the easiest Elite Four member, but now that my team is full of Ghost types, I'm not sure this time. I lead Shandanks against her Mismabat. I get a pretty strong Hex off, but I'm one-shot by a Shadow Ball. Next is Bandrio. I try to take out Mismabat with Shadow Claw, but I'm taken out by Shadow Ball. I realize I need to send in Driflax to be immune to Ghost-type moves, and I get off a Phantom Force to knock it out finally. Agatha sends in Umter, who Dark Pulses me and gets a flinch, then knocks me out next turn. I send in Metalurk, who also flinches to Dark Pulse and faints. I send in Abslash to resist, and get off a Sword Stance and get off a strong Night Slash before healing up, but I keep getting flinched and faint. I send in Togegar, who can Draining Kiss, and knocks out Umter. Next is Gendoom, and I revive Driflax to resist the fire moves it might have. Togegar falls to Gendoom while dealing a tiny amount of damage. I send in Driflax while I revive other team members. I'm able to get off a Belly Drum, then a Rest right after, and knock out Gendoom with a Phantom Force, then Wobgar right after. Snorgar comes out, who also Belly Drums and rests, while I rest myself, then realizing I can't hit it with either of my moves, since it's immune to normal and Ghost type moves. I send in Abslash, who gets off a Sword Stance, then I get a Night Slash to knock out Snorgar after it tries to curse me. Agatha was actually a bit harder this time around, which was surprising. Finally, there's Lance. I send in Metalurk against his Dragados. I Hammer Arm him repeatedly, healing when he heals. I get a lucky crit to knock it out, and he sends in Typhnair. I try to Earthquake it, but it Fire Blasts me, knocking me out in one hit. I send in Abslash to Sword Stance, but a critical hit Fire Blast takes me out in one shot. Togegar comes in, and I try out Metronome, which calls Venom Drench, which is useless right now. I try some Saddle Balls out, but get knocked out and send in Bandrio. I outspeed and knock it out, and Togenite comes in. I try another Sword Stance, but Togenite uses Outrage, which KOs me. In comes Shandanks, who also gets one shot by Outrage. My last Pokemon is Driflax, who lives in Outrage while I start reviving my other Pokemon. I get a free rest off while Togenite hits itself in Confusion. I'm able to get off a Belly Drum, but Togenite outspeeds me while I try to rest again, and it knocks me out. I send in Bandrio and revive Driflax again, while Bandrio gets knocked out. I'm stuck in a revive cycle at this point before I remember Togegar is immune to Outrage, so I revive it before Metalurk is able to knock out Togenite with a super effective Meteor Mash. Lance sends in Tyrandactyl, who almost KOs me with the Dragon Rush, while I almost KO with Meteor Mash. Lance switches out to Poryja, who takes a big chunk as well. It knocks out Metalurk and I send in Togegar. I revive Metalurk again just to be safe, but I'm able to knock out both of Lance's remaining Pokemon with Togegar, while Poryja is being annoying recover spamming. I guess I deserve it for revive spamming myself. Gary's the only one left now. Time for the final battle. I send in Shandanks against his Nidogeot. I try Blizzard but miss my first one, and hit the second one, almost knocking it out. Shandanks gets knocked out and I send in Bandrio. Nidogeot tries to double team, but I knock it out with Shadow Claw. Ripe Mortar comes in and I switch out to Metalurk, thinking it's going to go for a super effective Rock-type move, but I get japed, and it Fire Blasts Metalurk. I deliberate for a while before sending in Togegar. A couple Water Pulses take out Ripe Mortar eventually. Gary sends in Electados and it takes me out with a Thunder Punch. I send in Driflax, who almost knocks out with high horsepower. Gary switches out to Tautor while I get a rest off. I try Phantom Force before realizing it's part normal type and so will take no damage. I try Giga Impact, but it doesn't do very much damage and I fall to some Zen Headbutts. I send in Bandrio and get in a couple Sword Stances and knock out with Drill Peck. I thought I would outspeed Electados, but forgot Tautor cut my speed with Scary Face, and Electados knocks me out. Abslash is last out and I alternate King Shields with Revives and Sword Stances to weaken Electados. I knock out with Sacred Sword, and Gary sends out Starkazam, who knocks out with Surf. In comes Driflax while I revive Abslash. Luckily I select Phantom Force on a turn where Gary uses Reflect, and I get a crit the next turn to knock it out. Last up is Gary's Alator, but I'm out of PP for Phantom Force. Leaf Storm knocks me out and I send in Ab Slash. For safety I revive Bandrio, and it turns out to be required. I also revive Driflax before healing Bandrio. I go for a Sword Stance and then use Drill Pick to one-hit Alator, beating Gary and taking the champion title. Here's some extra fusions to look at while I talk in the end here. I'd say this was a little easier than the fighting type run, but harder than Dragon and Electric. It's helped me learn to be a bit smarter in my secondary typing for each fusion. Having a Dark and Normal type really helps with Dark and Ghost type moves that would normally destroy my team. It also made me realize I need more support moves for battles like Koga, where I just couldn't kill that muck for a long while. Otherwise it was really fun. I just wanted to thank you all once again for the support, and I wanted to get the most requested video so far out quickly after the last one. Don't expect me to put out videos this fast in the future. I was just motivated by everyone's appreciation, and I wanted to give back a little. I'd say in the future I'll do about one video a week. That seems doable for me. Also, I've been thinking of trying out other games than Pokemon. Games I've been playing a lot lately are Project Zomboid and Binding of Isaac. I know it's kinda dangerous for some channels to branch off into other content than their main one, especially with games like Pokemon or Team Fortress. Let me know what you think though. Also, I tried using a different microphone for this video. Let me know what you think of it. I'm gonna post another poll for which type the next video should be. I'll take the result from it on Monday when I wake up. I think I might stream the next run while I play through it too. I'll give plenty of advanced warning on my community page before I do though. Time to take another nap. Have a nice one.